Hello, my name is Tanmoy and today we'll be doing an iOS club session on an introduction to SwiftUI. Um, let's start. So SwiftUI was unveiled at WWDC as a new framework for writing apps using declarative syntax. In my personal experience, it's somewhat of a middle ground between the Objective-C way of declaring UI, where it's entirely code, and if you haven't done Objective-C before, it's slightly time-taking to get used to. And the way we previously did it in the club using Interface Builder, where you have to write very little to no code. So SwiftUI involves, obviously, it's still programmatic because you have to write some code, but it is declarative. So you say exactly what you want and you'll get what you say. And it is very intuitive in my opinion. And it will be probably more evident once we get into the demo at the end of the presentation. Another really cool feature of SwiftUI is that you are able to share code on different platforms. So if you are developing an app that you want to be cross-platform, like it needs to work on iOS, watchOS, macOS, and other operating systems, you don't need to write UI for separate apps. You don't need to go to Interface Builder and then customize the interface for each device you're planning on deploying the app on. You can reuse other SwiftUI code on different platforms. In my experience, it's sometimes good to do a little bit of tweaking with it, just to make it fleshed out and give it final touches. But it's definitely very reusable. And a lot of the apps that are written by Apple are also written in SwiftUI. So it's generally being adopted pretty widely, even though it's been out for only 2 years. Let's talk about views now. Views are a new concept that come with SwiftUI. So views replace the old concepts like Interface Builder and Storyboard. As you can see in the image that we have attached here, views involve the basic building blocks of any app written in SwiftUI. They have the code that will make up the UI for that particular view, and because it is all declared out, you can preview what it is going to look like on the right. Views define a piece of UI as we discussed, and views also define the dependencies like the state variables and properties of each line. And views also conform to the view protocol instead of a class that inherits from a base class like UI view. That's something that's new and different in SwiftUI. Adding more details to it. So views are allocated on the stack. We'll have more on this being discussed in the demo and shown in the demo. And the stacks and the concept of stacks is also pretty interesting. So views can be view elements can be stacked in front of each other, on top of each other, or next to each other. If you're talking about this stack elements. So as you can see here, there's a V stack being shown in the code. So there's V stacks, H stacks, and Z stacks. And as the name suggests, V stacks stack elements on top of each other, H stacks next to each other horizontally, and Z stacks in front or behind each other. There's no additional allocation on reference housing for runtime overhead, and collapsed view hierarchy for rendering has led to the creation of single small single purpose views. So that's what the human design guidelines also say. You should design apps that have small single-purpose views, and that way development becomes slightly easier. Views and the SwiftUI also allows for easy refactoring of code. It's pretty light because the extraction has little runtime overhead too. So pretty refactorable. We can change things up pretty easily. And SwiftUI has a single requirement of body. Body is the only entry point ever called in SwiftUI, and this is going to lead to a lot, considerably fewer number of errors. And we'll talk more about why when we get to the demo. And now I guess we can just jump into it. And now let's get started with the demo. First, we can start off by creating our application, and let us call it SwiftUI diet log, because the SwiftUI app that we'll be making today will involve us logging the names of the meals that we eat and the number of calories they contain, and being able to add and delete those entries. And let's get started. So, as you can see, let me quickly change to the new iPhone. We have the general layout of SwiftUI on the left. So you import SwiftUI, there's the content view with the body that we talked about, and there's the preview on the right and some code to process the preview. Just says hello world right now. Something interesting is when you actually change the color and the font, you can actually see SwiftUI adding in the code for that. So I think that's pretty neat, personally. In terms of the app that we're making something that allows us to log the names of the dishes that we are eating and the number of calories that we consume, and having a button to add it to the list and being able to move and delete the list. So let us get started with that. Before we work on the SwiftUI part of it, we are going to work on a regular Swift file where we just put in the general structure for what our menu of dishes and each menu is going to contain. Let's call it menu. And import combine. And then let's make a struct called meal, which is a type identifiable. And then let's have a variable called ID, a variable called name, and a variable called class. And then let's have all of them be of type string. Normally, I would like to have calories be a numeric, but we'll be able to use calorie if we use string, which will help us save time for the sake of this club session. So let's do that. And since we're more concerned with showcasing the features of SwiftUI, and then let's have a meal menu class, so we can use it in our SwiftUI file. Let's have a public variable menu, which has a list of menus. We'll be able to list of menu items we'll be able to use. That was the template, and this should be correct. And now let's get back here. Now we can start working on the SwiftUI part of it, which is pretty exciting. Before we get to the body, it would be nice if we could have parts of it set up, as we should have each view element be as modular and specific as possible. So let's create a UI element that can be called entry space, and let's have it extend some view, and then let's use an H stack for this. As we talked about stacks before, this is going to stack our UI elements next to each other, which is what we want for this. Let's have text fields. Let's say enter in a meal for every time we enter a meal. And then let's have the text say the name of the meal, and let's also create some properties that we can use throughout this file. Which is going to be a meal menu type, and then state variables, name and calories. There we go. Calories. And then let's have the text of the name. And another one that says filter health and says enter calories. Next we add in some padding space before we add in the button for that. We make sure that the keyboard type for adding calories is decimal, even though it's a string. We'll try it improvise. And now we can go for adding the button. Let's have it do the action of a method that we create later on, which we can call add new dish, and have it have moving add and that looks good. Now let's actually add the function of adding new dish. It should append to the list of menu items. And use the constructor property.
Probably not the best way of having an ID, but this is going to be for our club session and will suffice for the current iteration. And let's take it demo. And name is going to be software, name that we created before, tab, and then we probably like reset the text, so we add in these features. And so far looking so good, but as you can tell, there's nothing that's changed so far because the body remains unchanged. Once we start adding stuff to the body, we'll see actual change in the preview. Let us start with adding a navigation view. On a V-stack. So the entry space is going to be arranged horizontally, and the rest of the stuff I would like for it to be arranged vertically. The V-stack is going to have the entry space. Let's start with something. You can see it being added so far, but we don't actually have a list implemented for that could be seen being updated each time we actually work on it. So let's get that going as well. For each menu item, we'll just display it as new. Meal and say, let's format the text appropriately. Meal name and calories are what's the most important to us. Looks like we're getting an error. A quick fix for something like this would be just reducing the number of operations we do, which could be done like this. Hopefully this fixes it. And another thing we need to do is make sure that we have all of this in a VStack. Since we would want the entry space in the list to be vertically arranged. And now we can just test something out. Let's go with this. Probably add this. And then we can add a navigation bar title for one, so we can see what it should actually be called. And you can call it the meal tracker. And now we can also make sure that there is an ability to move them and delete the items. And this should go right after the navigation view, and the VStack in the navigation view list. So I'm gonna put it here. And it shows up. And we can probably have another bar item called edit button, which allows you to edit the items, and we can have them be trailing and call them edit. And now we can add a little more functionality to our app by adding options to move and delete the items. So we can have two more functions called move and delete. Once you move, what it would do is the index to typo, index it to in. We can add functionality. And another function called delete. And then move. And then add the message here. Move. And we can now set up. Have a few entries into here. I'm making up these values. And I have the edit button pressed. Once they're done, they look like this. Once they're do they look like this. And then you can mix them around, as you can see, and then you can delete them, or you can simply swipe them to the left. And that is a basic introduction to SwiftUI. There's a lot of resources on the developer.apple website. I highly encourage you to check them out if you're interested in learning more SwiftUI. We'll have a few more sessions that we will do using SwiftUI. Um, the session on app clips will definitely be using an app written in SwiftUI too. So I highly encourage you guys to check it out and comment below if you have any questions about it, or let us know in the in-person sessions. See you guys. Have a good one.